They say the earth remembers, even when the people have forgotten. I remember the night it all began like it was yesterday. The wind carried an unnatural chill, the kind that seeps into your bones and whispers to you that something dark is coming. The elders always warned us about the sacred grove, a place hidden deep in the heart of the forest where the trees twisted like skeletal hands reaching for the sky. They told us stories about it, stories of ancient spirits and forgotten blood debts, but we never listened. Not until it was too late. The village of Izinwa had always lived in the shadow of these tales. No one dared venture into the grove after dark. It was a place where time stood still, and the very air felt thick with secrets. But Nana, headstrong, fearless Nana decided to challenge those old stories on the night of the blood moon. We watched him walk into the forest with a smirk on his face, the red glow of the moon casting strange shadows across his features. He didn't believe in curses or spirits. He thought it was all nonsense, just tales meant to scare children. But that night, under the blood moon, the village would learn just how real those stories were. Hours passed, and Nana didn't return. His friends laughed it off at first, saying he was probably playing a trick, but I knew better. I felt it in the air. Something had shifted, something dark and ancient had been disturbed. I couldn't sleep, and neither could my younger brother Obi. The whole village seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something to happen. It wasn't until dawn that we found him. Nana stumbled back into the village just as the first light crept over the horizon. He was covered in dirt, his clothes torn, and a strange, jagged scar ran across his chest, one that hadn't been there before. His eyes, once full of life and mischief, were hollow, distant, as if a part of him had been left behind in the grove. No one could get a word out of him. He just sat there, staring into nothing, his hands trembling. The elders tried to question him, but Nana said nothing. He didn't need to. The look in his eyes said it all. Something had followed him back from that cursed place. We thought it was over then. We thought whatever had happened in the grove had ended with Nana's return. But we were wrong. The livestock started dying first. Cows and goats found lifeless in the morning, their bodies untouched but their blood drained, as if something had feasted on them in the night. Then the whispers began. Villagers would wake in the dead of night, swearing they heard voices outside their windows, voices that didn't belong to anyone they knew. And in the heart of the village, the old well began to overflow with water so dark it looked like ink. But the worst of it was Ijoma. She had been Nana's betrothed, full of life and laughter. One evening she went to the river to fetch water, and she never returned. When they found her body 2 days later, her veins had turned black, as if something had poisoned her from the inside. Her death was the final straw. That's when the elders told us the truth about the blood pact. They said that centuries ago, our ancestors had made a deal with something dark and powerful, a force older than the village itself. In exchange for protection, they had offered their blood, an unbreakable bond that tied the village to this ancient power. The curse had been dormant for generations, but Nana's foolishness had awakened it. And now the village was paying the price. It wasn't long after Ijoma's death that Nana disappeared. One night, he simply vanished into the forest, leaving behind nothing but that scarred chest and those hollow eyes. And that's when the bound started appearing. They came out of the shadows, their faces pale, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. They looked human, but they weren't. They were the spirits of those who had been taken by the curse, bound to the ancient force that had claimed their lives. And now they were hunting for more. The village was in chaos. No one knew who would be next. The bound moved silently through the night, and by morning, another villager would be gone. The elders said there was only one way to stop it. Someone had to return to the sacred grove, find the relic that Nana had disturbed, and break the curse before the next blood moon. But no one dared go. Except me. I didn't want to go. I was terrified. But when I looked at Obi, trembling in fear every night, I knew I couldn't let him be taken. The curse had already claimed too much. It was time to fight back. So under the light of the next full moon, I set out into the forest, following the path that Nana had taken. The air was thick with silence, and the trees seemed to close in around me as I walked deeper into the darkness. I didn't know what I would find in the sacred grove. I didn't know if I would return. But I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't going to let the bound take me without a fight. The night I entered the sacred grove, the forest was unnaturally still. Even the wind, which usually whispered through the trees, seemed to have gone silent, as though the very air was holding its breath. I had grown up hearing stories about this place, but none of them prepared me for the reality of it. The trees loomed tall and twisted, their branches reaching down like claws ready to snatch me up. Every step I took felt like it echoed in the emptiness, as though I were the only living thing in a world long forgotten by time. I wasn't alone for long. I don't know how long I walked before I felt it something watching me. I could feel eyes on me, but every time I turned around, there was nothing there, just the trees and the shadows. But I knew better. I had grown up in a Zinwa where shadows held secrets, and where stories were more real than we cared to admit. Something was out there, just beyond my sight, waiting. I kept walking, my heart pounding in my chest, until I reached the heart of the grove. There, hidden beneath a blanket of ivy and vines, was the altar, the one the elders had spoken of. It was old, far older than anything in the village, its stone surface covered in strange markings that seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight. And in the center of the altar lay the relic. It was smaller than I had expected, no bigger than a dagger, its blade dark and stained with centuries of blood. But as soon as I saw it, I knew this was the thing that had started it all. This was what Nana had disturbed on the night of the blood moon. I didn't want to touch it. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to turn and run, to leave the forest and never look back. But I couldn't. Not with Obi's face in my mind, his terrified eyes watching me leave. Not with the knowledge that the bound would keep hunting until they had claimed us all. So I reached out, my fingers trembling as they brushed against the cold metal of the relic. The moment I touched it, everything changed. The wind roared to life, swirling around me like a living thing, and the shadows seemed to move, closing in from all sides. The air grew thick and cold, and I felt something dark and ancient, stirring beneath the earth. It was as though the relic itself had a pulse, beating in time with my own heart, drawing me deeper into the curse with every passing second. And then I heard it, a voice, soft and distant, but unmistakable. It was Nana's voice, calling my name, begging me to leave, to run before it was too late. But it was already too late. The ground trembled beneath my feet, and from the shadows they emerged, the bound, their glowing eyes fixed on me, their pale faces twisted with hunger. They moved silently, their feet never touching the ground, and I knew in that moment that I was not going to make it out of the grove alive. But then, just as the bound reached out for me, something unexpected happened. The relic in my hand began to glow, faintly at first, but then brighter and brighter, until it was almost blinding. The bound hesitated, their eyes fixed on the relic, and for the first time I saw fear in their faces. Whatever this relic was, it held power over them, and I intended to use it. I raised the relic high above my head, and as I did, the bound recoiled, their twisted forms retreating into the shadows. The air around me crackled with energy, and the earth beneath my feet seemed to pulse with life. I didn't know how, but I had the power to stop them. But the cost, I would soon find out.